Welcome back to another episode of What's Up, Prof? What's up, Prof?
You know, the same rubbish is what's up ever since this world began.
It hasn't changed, no.
Nothing's changed. The same nonsense, the same queries, the same arguments, the same
Exactly.
nonsense.
The
Yes.
same arguments. It's thousands of years old already.
Solomon was absolutely right.
Nothing new under the sun.
No.
We're going to talk about a refreshing subject today.
You really think so?
A very controversial one.
Nothing is ever refreshing when it comes to this kind of thing.
No. Let's open with a word of prayer. Our Heavenly Father, thank you again for bringing us together. Lord, this is a very controversial subject today, and we ask that you bless us and enlighten our minds that we can uplift you through speaking about these things. In Jesus' name, amen.
Yes. Martin, propensities towards disease runs in families.
Definitely.
Yes.
But
My
they say-
father had this, therefore his offspring has this. There's a history of heart disease in the family. There's a history of cancer in the family. That's one of the first questions you are asked. Did your father have it? Did your mother have it? Did they this have it? Did they have it? Right?
Mm-hmm.
But did you know that diets also run in families?
Correct.
How you ate is like the next generation ate. And when you married your wife and you said, but my mother never cooked like this, you're in big trouble. So no matter what you do, you're going to get into trouble. Because don't touch my plate. Right?
I think it's the worst arguments come from over a plate.
Over a
food.
plate of food. Yes. And my mother made this thing in this and this way. That's it. For 1 week, total silence. If you're lucky.
And probably not anything on your plate.
So, Martin, and the other thing is good food, good health. Is it just good food, or are there other factors that have to be taken into account?
Other factors, but if you talk about health, it's also not just physical, but
Correct.
mental health as well.
So there are so many parameters that we have to look at, and it becomes a war zone. Now, some people are very good at one of the aspects. Now, if you exercise, for example, everybody knows that that is good for you. Everybody needs regular exercise. That is why people, even with poor nutrition, can have longevity
Yes.
if they are active.
Mhm.
Let's say they're working on a farm and they're busy and they're doing that. But if they have a sedative lifestyle, then life becomes problematic. So
Correct.
some people become almost fanatical in terms of fitness, but there are other things which they will then leave by the wayside, right? Some people want to build muscle, and they will violate their health in order to gain the muscle. And they think that they are strong, and therefore this is just fine. So it's not just a question of good food, but you know, I can survive with bad food for a while. I cannot survive without air for more than a couple of minutes.
Correct.
Then I'm dead, right?
Yes.
So I need good air.
Mm-hmm.
I need good food. I need regular exercise.
Yes.
I need water.
Water.
I need to cleanse out my system. And I always used to say, you know, you don't wash your socks in orange juice.
Yeah.
Although orange juice is very good,
Yes.
but your system has to extract the water and use that and get the nutrients out of that. So your system sometimes wants a good flush,
Yes.
a good clean out.
And unfortunately, it also has to be good water.
It has to be good water. Now, we could have a whole discussion just on water. Because water is not water, is not water, is not water. there are different kinds of water. Now, some people believe, if you purify the water, then that's fine. Now you're drinking nice, clean water. But water has a crystalline structure because the various bonds in the water molecule ensure a particular arrangement of the molecules. And in actual fact, a drop of water is almost like one molecule.
Yeah.
Because they're all interconnected with the positive to the negative charges, the oxygen against the hydrogen, and it gives a particular structure. And that also affects the surface tension of the water. Now, as soon as you add minerals into the mix, it changes the structure. If you add impurities into the mix, it changes the structure. So one of the water sources that have excellent qualities is artesian well water. Now, how does that work? It comes deep out of the ground, right?
Yeah.
And it's an amazing system. I'm always stunned when I see how God arranged all of these things. So if you take a tree, a tree can be incredibly tall.
Yeah.
But the water gets to the top, right? Now, in this tree, there are xylem and phloem channels. And the water moves up them. They consist of cellulose. And cellulose is a kind of sugar structure that also has electropositive and electronegative aspects, hydrogen bonds and oxygen in the molecule. Now, when that water is absorbed by the roots of the tree, then the water moves up the tree by hydrogen bonding. So this channel that consists of the cellulose, these sugar molecules, the water, the oxygen will link to the hydrogen, then to the hydrogen, to the oxygen, the hydrogen, and the next molecule of water will be attached to that one, and so they're going up in tandem, and they can go up incredible heights. And the tree transpires up there and gets rid of its water, right? And it takes up all of this, takes it up. So that's how the water moves up. Now the same happens in a mountain range. You have all your rocks, and then you have quartz crystals in the rocks. And sometimes there are layers of quartz crystals, and sometimes there are vertical uplifted areas that go deep, hundreds of meters down into the rocks. And any subterranean water that finds these channels, because of the crystalline structure, does the same thing as in a tree. Goes up like this, linking, and any impurity like a heavy metal or something cannot go along with it, stays behind. So that by the time the water comes out of this artesian well, it's absolutely pure water. That's why you find these mountain springs high up in the mountain, and you're wondering, how did they get there, right? They come from deep down at the bottom. And that water has a particular structure and a particular surface area that your cells love. Your cell loves it. And it enables it to take up minerals and to absorb those minerals in a specific way. If you disrupt that, then the surface tension is different. Sometimes you drink water and it feels like just going straight through. It doesn't go into the cells.
And then that's sometimes purified water, like you say.
Yes. So what kind of water is very important. So good water. My advice is good spring water is the best water to drink. That's my opinion from all the reading that I've done on the matter.
If I may ask, if you read the label on the spring water, what will be anything negative on there that you should look for?
Well, they often give the quantities of minerals or substances in there. It shouldn't be high in sodium, etc., etc. If it says spring water and it tastes sweetish to the taste, then it's probably a good water.
Yeah. Prepared water is not good water.
Well, it's not in the same class as artesian well water. Basically, what I'm saying, Martin, is the way God designed it is always the best.
Correct.
And that's a principle. The way God designed it is always the best. If you want to go to a mountain stream and you're looking there and you see tadpoles swimming in the water, that's good water. You can drink it. If it's sterile, there's nothing there, then be concerned.
Correct.
All right? People are inclined the other way. Oh, there's a frog in the water. I'm not going to drink this water. The frog is in the water because it's good water. Right? So the way God designed it, that's a principle. Now, if you come out of the world, nothing is ever like God designed it. It's as man manipulated it.
Yes.
That would be the best, right? So what is good food? How do you achieve good health? You need exercise.
Correct.
You need good food. You need good water.
Mm-hmm.
You need sunlight.
Yes.
Sunlight. Sunlight resets your program, your computer program. Sunlight not only produces vitamin D by the radiation impact on the skin, but it also resets your hypothalamus, your master control endocrine gland just below the base of the brain.
Yeah.
And then you have your pineal gland, which lines up and with the amount of light that comes in, light and darkness, etc., sets your melatonin levels, which are incredibly important for a good immune response.
Exactly.
So what do you want? To put it very simply, good food, good water, exercise, regular exercise, and also strength exercise. Not just one kind of exercise. You need variety.
Yeah.
When God created humanity, He gave them a job. Right?
Yes.
Which was a job which entailed many things. Some of the plants that you're going to work with are that high. Some of them are way up there. Some of them are difficult. Some of them are not so difficult. You have to bend, you have to lift, you have to work, you have to do different kinds of movement.
A good workout in a garden
is the best workout you can have. So working an hour or two in the garden per day shouldn't be seen as diversion. It should be seen as part of your duty. That's the very best exercise that you could get. And if you can take a spade and dig the ground and have all of those movements, and you need some strength exercise. Did you know that you can have the worst of diets, but if you have strength exercise and all of these that go along with it, it puts calcium into your bone. Just that. So you cannot correct some things just by using a one-sided approach.
Correct. That's not one size fits all.
Correct. And then another thing that's important, Martin, your mental health. Everybody knows that without an anchor, you become depressed. And disorder creates depression.
Yeah.
So when God comes into the equation, disorder disappears.
Yes.
Order comes into the life. A relationship with God sets the mind at rest because there is a help plan and a communication, a friendship bond that develops. So talking to God, having a relationship with God affects your health.
Definitely.
And a positive outlook affects your health. Many, many diseases begin in the mind.
Yes.
And the other place where diseases begin is in the gut.
Easier.
And the gut has its own brain.
Mm-hmm.
And the gut communicates with the mind. And when that communication is disturbed, disease is a consequence. So you want to keep a healthy gut.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Martin, how do you keep a healthy gut?
Good food.
Now, is this good food just for you? Or are there other organisms that reside in your gut?
Definitely. Bacteria.
Okay, now those bacteria, are they your friend or are they your enemy?
If you treat them badly, they become your enemy. If you treat them right, they're your friend.
All right, so now if you ate with the knowledge that you have a dear friend in your intestine that you have invited to lunch, and you know that bad food will kill him, will you purposefully eat bad food to destroy your good friend?
Unfortunately, so we do. But you're not supposed to.
You're not supposed to. All right, so when you eat consciously that you're not eating for yourself alone.
Correct.
The type of bacteria that you have in your intestine will largely contribute to your health status. So you need exercise, you need good food, you need good water, you need good fresh air, you need sunlight, you need to get your rhythms right, you have to have enough sleep,
Yes.
you want to have your melatonin levels at the correct level. You want to have communication with God. You want to produce happy hormones. You want to have endorphins in your life. And what gives you endorphins? Exercise in itself will give you endorphins. Did you know that good music will give you endorphins as well?
Yeah.
And that rock and roll music will destroy them?
Disturbs the whole system, actually.
Disturbs the whole system. So, Martin, this is a package. You cannot take one item, we've titled it Good Food, Good Health, and say that is the be-all and end-all of a healthy lifestyle. But it is probably one of the more important ones.
It's where it starts.
It's where it starts. Once the food comes right, and the gut comes right, then often the mind comes right.
Correct.
When the mind comes right, you can discern spiritual things. And then suddenly this book becomes very important, and your communication with God can improve. Did you know that even the occult world says that if you want to have a good spiritual experience, you better eat a particular diet?
Yeah, you've mentioned it before.
We've spoken about that before. All right, so let's attack this from an holistic point of view. And then we also, Martin, need to talk about what happens when things go wrong.
Correct. Because that's where most of us are today.
Yes, everything's going wrong at the moment. And what perceptions are there out there in the world? Now, we had this discussion about science, right? And just because you have a white coat doesn't mean that you have the right coat.
Correct.
Sorry, but that is a
Yeah,
bit poetic, but it's a true statement.
it is. It's if you are saying that you've got the we behind you, the we's not always right, like
Correct.
you said. As
And
well.
if you have a white coat, it doesn't mean that you know what is good for your plate. Because what comes to your plate historically is what you are inclined to use, right?
Correct. You mentioned earlier that even if the diet is a little bit not the best that it is, but somebody works hard and all this, it keeps him going longer. I've got an example, for instance, if you take farmers.
Yes.
Most farmers, well, the older generation farmers, work hard, and that's why whenever you want to mention something about food, they'll always tell you, but my grandfather
There are many
are 80
factors.
or 89 or 90 years old, and that's when you're talking about diet.
Correct.
But unfortunately, you can't just mention look at the diet there. You have to look at his lifestyle.
So let's look at all of these things and see whether we can make some sense out of it. Now, a few years ago, there was a man who decided that he was going to eat only one particular kind of food that was dished up by a franchise.
Yeah.
And what the result was, and since then there's been a huge outcry, and some of the menus have probably changed a little bit here and there, but generally speaking, is fast food the answer to good health?
Definitely not, but...
All right, and we spoke about disease and obesity and all of these issues. And that directly affects your immune response, your health status, and if there's a pandemic, those most at risk will be those that are overweight, that have high blood pressure, and that are compromised in many, many areas. Correct. Right? So let's just look at a little video from that ancient time and see what transpired.
Your blood tests are excellent. Okay, you're starting off with a total cholesterol of 168, which is less than 200, and it's really superb.
Your blood level's fine, your iron level is good as well.
You have no evidence of diabetes, your fasting blood sugar is very low.
The other thing that we looked at were all your electrolytes in terms of the salts in your blood, your kidney function, your liver function. They were all perfect.
Your triglycerides, which is your building blocks of fat, basically from what you acquire from eating fat, is 43, which is low, which is good. I think the worst case scenario is that you increase your triglycerides and your cholesterol level, and if you have any heart disease in the family or any underlying heart disease, you're putting your heart at risk.
I expect to see an increase in your triglycerides because that can be affected. You're at 87 now, and I think that will change. And I think that's the only thing that will change.
Out of everything?
Out of everything. I mean, there might be some minor variations, but the body is extremely adaptable. And the kidneys will handle any extra salt that you're taking in, and your liver will be able to metabolize additional fat.
Your total cholesterol was 165 before, now it's 225. A liver that's inflamed in any way or sick in any way will leak some of its enzymes out into the blood. So this is very non-specific, but it means the liver is sick. Yeah. And the most likely cause of your liver sickness is a fatty liver. Your liver is now like pate. SGOT was originally 21. Now it's
130.
And SGPT was originally 20.
Was 20.
Now it's 290. More than tenfold increase.
That's
not good. Not good. Not good. Not good. So if somebody were doing this to their liver with alcohol, they could theoretically wipe out the liver, wipe out all the liver cells, and there'd be liver failure. Now, I've never heard of anybody doing this to their liver with a high-fat diet.
There's a drug that is used in emergency rooms called naloxone. It's used for heroin overdose. And a guy comes in, overdose on heroin, comatose, he's going to die. You inject him with this drug, and it blocks the opiate receptors in the brain. Heroin doesn't work, he wakes up. If I give that same drug to a real chocolate addict, a person just shoveling it in, you find the most amazing thing. They lose much of their interest in chocolate. They take a bite, they set it back down. In other words, it's not taste and mouthfeel. It's a drug effect of the food within the brain that keeps us coming back again and again. If you look at the menu at a fast food restaurant, they use all of the addicting components. They'll take a slab of meat, cover it with cheese, of course, which is filled with the casomorphins, the opiates that are found in the cheese protein. And then they serve it with a sugary soda, which has the addictive powers of sugar, with plenty of added caffeine. Now, you might be a 12-year-old kid. Your brain is no match for that combination.
This is really, you saw these numbers, right? These numbers are absolutely outrageous. Okay, for the first time, we're seeing uric acid elevated. So you're giving yourself hyperuricemia. And the danger of hyperuricemia is gout, kidney stones. The results for your liver are obscene beyond anything I would have thought.
Yeah.
Truly. I mean, you know, that movie Death in Las Vegas, Nicolas Cage. I mean, that pickled his liver during the course of a few weeks in Las Vegas, right?
Right.
I would never have thought that you could do the same thing with a high-fat diet.
Yeah.
My advice to you as a physician is that you've got to stop. You're pickling your liver.
Yeah.
You're kicking it while it's down now. You know, now it's down, and you're kicking it further. I mean, if you're an alcoholic, I'd say I'd say you're going to die. You keep drinking, you'll die. If the pain starts to radiate to your jaw or down your arm, that's life-threatening, and immediately so.
Yeah.
So I need to hear about that, or you need to call 911.
Okay.
All right?
I wouldn't suggest you continue the diet for a year to check this out. I don't think it's appropriate or healthy, especially with what showed up with your liver.
For a year.
Right.
So I shouldn't eat this food for a year?
No, I don't think so.
You know, we see people who like go on an alcohol binge and their numbers go up like crazy. But to go on, you know, a Mac attack, and they've got numbers to show that tax your liver too. I wouldn't have even thought about this, but it makes sense. Now that we have the data, it definitely makes sense.
So Martin, his binge of eating only these fast foods destroyed him to the point where they were saying, if you continue, you're going to die.
30 days.
30 days. That's it. So it tells you something about diet. Now, we have a culture in the world where we say that animal foods are the best to place into your body. That is in direct contradiction with the good book, right?
Correct.
And we've read this many, many times, but it's in direct contradiction with what this book has to say. Because it says there, and God said, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat, which means food.
Mm.
Remember when the King James says meat, it means food, not flesh.
No.
Flesh is
Meat.
Flesh is what we call meat today. All right. So the original diet was totally plant-based. Every seed, that's every legume, every nut, everything that you can imagine of, that's of a seed nature. And then every tree with fruit on it. And then after the fall, vegetables were added to the diet, not meat. And the longevity of humanity was in excess of 900 years.
Yes.
When meat was added to the diet, within one generation it fell to half of that. And in the next generation to half of that again, until we are eventually where we are now, 70, and if by reason of strength it should be 80, you can count yourself lucky, right?
Mm-hmm.
The average life expectancy is much, much lower than that. So we cannot look at the extremes and make conclusions. So the bottom line is, the Bible says that every creature was vegetarian, including every other animal on the planet. And what has transpired since then is as a consequence of sin. When Jesus was asked many times about why did Moses permit this, etc., 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 he would say it was not so in the beginning.
Yeah.
So it's important to have a look at what was it like in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the ideal.
Correct.
Now, if you apply that health principle today, then we know that if you have a vegetarian diet, and particularly if you have a vegan diet, that is a balanced diet. Now, that is important.
And it's important because, just to make it clear, it's a plant-based whole food diet.
Correct. Plant-based whole food. Today, the word vegan is not really what it's supposed to mean, because today it has all kinds of emotional things added to it, like animal cruelty acts, etc., etc. And we're talking about a plant-based diet.
Yes, the healthful.
Now, as we all know, because we've discussed it many times, I myself was a carnivore. And I was not very healthy.
Can I just ask, didn't you have a record somewhere about a burger eating contest?
Oh yes, I won various competitions and steak eating
Oh yeah? Yeah.
exercises. Yes, I had a huge capacity for animal protein. And I was a very sickly person, if you think about it. I was incredibly fit.
Mm.
And that, I think, was my saving grace, because I played a lot of squash, which is a high energy activity. But whenever I had a game, I would smell like a horse,
Yeah.
as the saltpeter would come out of my system. And your whole demeanor, your skin, everything is totally different.
Mm-hmm.
I had huge pores on my face because my body was constantly trying to throw out these toxins. Now, if you have a high animal protein diet, then the amino acid mix that you have is not the same as you would get from a plant-based diet.
No.
So if you have a diet of grains and legumes, which are the seed-bearing plants, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any grain mixed together with a legume in a meal gives you a perfect protein with every amino acid that you require. But even when you have that perfect, complete protein from the grain-legume combination, or grain-seed combination, or grain-nut combination, gives you that perfect amino acid profile. If you get the same complete protein from an animal protein, the ratio of the amino acids is different. Now, one of the amino acids that plant-based diet will give you in high quantities is the amino acid arginine. Now, arginine is a very specific amino acid, and it's a very interesting amino acid because it has more than one amino group. We don't have to go into the chemistry to confuse people, but it has more than one of these nitrogen groups, right?
Yeah.
And it is the amino acid that slots into your urea cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And your urea cycle is what takes ammonia that comes from the degradation of proteins, from the digestion of proteins. When that ammonia comes off, ammonia is highly, highly toxic. I mean, you use ammonia to kill everything off in your house when you use it as a household cleaner, right?
Correct.
Whatever it comes into contact with, it'll kill. So the same in your cells. When ammonia is set free in your cell, you have to detoxify it immediately or it will destroy your cells. And that's where the urea cycle comes in. And the beginning is arginine. And in the end, it splits out those amino groups and it produces urea. Now, if you're a bird or a reptile, you'll produce uric acid. Now, we also produce uric acid. It has more amino groups than the other things. So a person that has an overload of animal protein in their body will also produce uric acid. And that can lead to other issues like gout and all of the other secondary diseases. So a plant-based diet is in itself a detox diet.
Correct.
Because it helps the body, because it pushes the reaction in the direction of urea production, helps the body to keep it at a level so that you don't have the buildup of toxins in your blood. Another amino acid that is high in animal protein, or the amino acids, are the phenolic amino acids. Those are amino acids that have ring structures. And phenylalanine is one of them, for example. Now, these ring structures are like benzene, and they can be carcinogenic in high concentrations. Now, if you have a diet that consists of a high protein diet, low carbohydrate diet, then your body has to change the protein into a carbohydrate. Because your brain, your nervous system, requires pure carbohydrate.
Yes. So now your body has to work 3 or 4 times as hard to get that same nutrient that your brain needs.
Correct. Now, the way people think in the world is to say, carbohydrates will make me fat. Therefore, I'll stick to a high protein diet. If you have a high protein diet, you are going to force your body to take some of the protein that you have eaten and to convert it into carbohydrates. Because your brain cannot be fed by protein.
Correct.
It has to receive carbohydrates. Now, what is the logical thing, Martin? When you receive this high protein diet and you're taking half of it and changing it to carbohydrates, you are loading your body with the amino groups.
Yeah.
You are loading your body with the phenolic groups. Okay? And they are toxic to your body. So you're loading your body with toxins.
Correct.
All right. Your body can get rid of it through the urea cycle, excrete the other. Some of it goes out through the stool. And sometimes the excess is so high that it actually crystallizes and sits in your joints and gives you all kinds of problems, joint problems. Why not reduce that problem by cutting down the protein and adding the carbohydrate? Then you wouldn't have that problem. Now, the carbohydrate that you are consuming, in what form should it be?
Whole.
It should be a whole food. What does that mean? It means it must be a food that contains what the original contained. And that has 2 kinds of fibers in it.
Yeah.
Soluble fiber and insoluble fiber. Now, the soluble fiber is amazing. It's what produces the gums. For example, if you cook a fruit, it makes like a goo, and we call that jam, right?
Yeah.
That's because of the soluble fiber. The insoluble fiber is the roughage.
That, like a scraper.
Yes. Now, the roughage, the insoluble fiber, gives you gut mobility. So as you have the peristalsis going down your gut, it moves along easily. It also absorbs water, so it keeps the moisture content of your gut perfect, and you have good mobility of food through the intestine. So generally speaking, if you eat every day, you should actually get rid of the waste every day as well. If there is a lag, and some people only go every second day, some people only go once a week to the little room with the flushing mechanism. What goes in should also go out readily, because that's part of your detoxifying system. For that, you need complex carbohydrates.
Yeah. Does that system work if you only have an animal protein diet?
No.
It can't work.
It will
in somewhere in your intestines, you're going to start
you're going to
producing
have problems. You're going to have compaction. And a person who has a high animal protein diet will receive that intestinal compaction. That will create the need for tremendous pressure to get rid of whatever's in the intestine. I call it the eye bulging experience.
Okay.
If you go blood red when you're sitting on your private throne, as you try to force out whatever is the obstacle in there, then there's something terribly wrong. It should be just gone,
Yeah.
right? That's how it should be.
I just want to come back to the fiber that you were talking about and just restate the importance that it has to be whole, complete
It has to be.
carbohydrate. Because whenever it's processed, that the whole system is not going to work like you've just mentioned.
Whole food doesn't necessarily mean that you're not allowed to process it,
Okay.
but it must have everything that was in there originally.
Exactly. Nothing must be taken
Now,
out.
Industry has so changed humanity's diet because industry requires mass production.
Yes.
Now, in the old days, you used to go to the miller,
Mm-hmm.
and the name Miller is still very common in the world. Mr. Miller, how are you today, right? Or in German, Herr Müller. Why? Because there was a miller,
Yeah.
and he had a stone mill, and he used to put the grain in, and the stones used to rub it and grind it, and it used to come out, and everything that was in the original was in the final packet, right? People like refined food, so they put it through a sieve, and they get rid of the roughage,
Yeah.
which is a major problem. Now, I'm not one that says you have to have a long face when you eat. It's fine if that is an occasional treat that you are having. But if that is your lifestyle, you have a problem. If white bread is a regular component on your table, you are looking for trouble.
Yeah.
In any case, I don't understand why people would want to eat it, because it tastes like cardboard.
Well, that's also, you get used to that taste, and then you're not used to the others.
Correct. But if you switch your lifestyle and you tell your palate, I don't want that, I want a whole grain food, eventually the other one will become loathsome
Yes,
to you.
if your palate changes that. Just on this bread, there are people that are gluten intolerant.
Yes.
But that's also a cause of humanity interfering in the original design.
Correct. There are many ideas about why people become gluten intolerant. And some of them are associated with intestinal maladies, such as celiac disease or Crohn's disease, where the permeability is such that the gluten creates an autoimmune response because it's not absorbed in the correct way. We have to talk about how you absorb proteins,
You can?
but we'll come to that in a moment. And there are many reasons as to why people can have problems like that. Some say it's because of genetically modifying the food. It's very difficult to trace from cause to effect. There are interesting graphs in the world where some people have adverse reactions to vaccinations. And the correlations between certain kinds of vaccination and celiac disease, for example, are very, very strong. So there are certain things that have been introduced that can cause this. But even if you go onto a gluten-free diet, then it must still be a whole food diet.
Correct. That's very important.
Yes, and many of the gluten-free foods that are produced by the industry are anything but whole foods.
Correct.
In fact, they are so refined, and just because they are gluten-free
Gluten-free.
doesn't make them healthy.
Exactly.
So that's why we also are going to produce a program, at least, as to what is a whole grain gluten-free bread and diet, for example, because that's also very important.
That stays with the same basic principle.
Correct.
As soon as there's been tampered with anything of the original,
Yes.
be careful.
Now, when you eat a whole food, plant-based diet, you're not, as I said in the beginning, you're not just eating for yourself. You are eating for your flora inside your intestines. Now, certain of the foods in the plants that we eat, we actually cannot digest.
Correct.
Some of the oligosaccharides, that is the complex carbohydrates. We have no problem with glucose, absorbing that. We have no problem with starches. We can digest them, the enzyme amylase will break them down and make the sugars available. We have no problem with that. But some of the oligosaccharides we cannot digest. So in a potato, for example, you have mainly starch. But you also have some of these strange oligosaccharides. Now, some of the gut bacteria, particularly those in the colon, love those.
Yeah. They're there for the.
It's their food. So in other words, if you think in terms of creation, you can say, well, God packed certain things in there that you don't steal the food that they need. Right? You have a high animal protein diet with this high acid load, then those bacteria actually start dying and you get a totally different flora. So you will start getting a flora that has to deal with the amino groups, right? And they produce ammonia.
Correct.
And this ammonia is an environment in which only certain bacteria, which actually will lead to carcinogenesis on the long run. Therefore, a high-fat, high animal protein diet is highly correlated with intestinal cancer.
Yeah.
So all of these things are very important. Now, it's always interesting to me it was fascinating to me to determine how protein digestion actually works. When you eat a plant or an animal product and it contains a protein, all the amino acids are in that protein. Some proteins are hard to digest and some are easier to digest. Now, in your stomach, you have an enzyme called pepsin. And pepsin takes a protein and chops it up into chunks. So it breaks it up into polypeptides, right? Little chunks. And the more animal protein there is, the longer it takes to digest. Okay? So if you're having a diet that contains, let's say, a plant-based food, carrot, a potato, fruit, or whatever, and you put an animal protein in it as well, like meat or casein from cheese, your body will determine how long that food has to stay in the stomach. We spoke about that before, satiety.
Yes.
Now,
Do I feel full?
Yes. Now, your body will digest, it's like a washing machine, doing its thing, adding the product that will break down the proteins and the foods. Then it sends through a sample, through the duodenum. And there are receptors in that part of the duodenum that tell you how far has the protein digestion run its course. And if it's not very adequate, it closes up the stomach.
Okay, stays in.
So you're going through another washing machine cycle. Then it's sent through a sample, and if you've had cheese in your diet, for example, it will say, stay there, stay there, stay there, stay there, stay there, for hours on end. In the meantime, the stuff that is in there in a warm, gooey environment starts fermenting.
Because they don't get digested in the stomach.
Correct. So here you have this major problem. So when you're eating a carbohydrate, the first digestion starts in your mouth because you have the enzyme amylase there. But when it gets to the stomach, it's an acid environment. And the more animal protein there is in that stomach, the more acid it has to be for the enzyme to work optimally. So any animal product that goes into your stomach increases the acidity. Now your immune system loves to run on a slightly alkaline system.
Yes, alkaline.
Alkaline. It doesn't like an acid system. Then as it passes through eventually, with the carbohydrates having fermented now, in other words, you're no longer getting carbohydrates. They've fermented to fatty acids. That adds to your acid load, right?
Yeah.
So a diet that contains animal protein is a high acid diet. The most acid foods are cheese, then come the meats.
Mm-hmm.
If you take a plant-based protein, it is slightly acid-forming, like most nuts,
Yeah.
etc., are slightly acid-forming. And some are even alkaline-forming, which is amazing because they contain amino acids. But they're so balanced with minerals that they're actually slightly alkaline. For example, almonds are slightly alkaline. Most grains are only slightly acid, but some grains are actually alkaline, like millet is an alkaline grain. So if you're suffering with acid load, then you want to include grains that are alkaline forming, like millet and sorghum and those, into your diet. So if you're going to have a diet that is alkaline forming, and it'll be automatically alkaline forming if it is a plant-based diet.
Yeah.
Fruit, even the most acid fruits like lemon, alkaline forming.
Yeah.
And your body loves it, and your bacteria are jumping for joy. So if you have these healthy bacteria in your stomach, then that already sends a signal to your brain, everything is honky-dory. And this communication between the brain in your intestines and your master brain is very, very important. Now the protein breaks up into chunks in your stomach. It goes through the duodenum, and another enzyme is added, which is trypsin. And that'll break the big chunks into smaller chunks. Then it passes, there's no free amino acid at this stage, right?
No.
Then it passes down your intestine, and as it goes lower and lower, the intestinal wall has particular cells that produce enzymes. And these are called ectopeptidases. And they start cutting off the amino acids. So the free amino acids only occur very low down in your intestine. And there they are absorbed by the hepatoportal vascular system, which takes it out and takes it to your liver. In your liver repacks the proteins into dipeptides, putting the amino acids at least, linking them together into chains of 2 or 3 or 4 tripeptides, etc., etc., and they go into your bloodstream. And then as your cell absorbs these, it'll split them off as they need them and require them as building blocks, enzyme production, whatever your cell needs. Now, the amount of protein you need is very, very small. 0.75 grams per kilogram.
Yeah.
So a man of your stature would need, I would guess, about 60 grams of protein per day.
Yeah.
I would need perhaps 70, 75 grams of protein a day. The average female between 55 and 65 grams of protein per day. And the consumption by the general population, especially in my country, here South Africa, is 3, 4, 5, 6 times that high.
Yes.
Okay? Now, the protein you do not store in your body. So whatever excess protein you are eating over and above that 0.75 grams per kilogram, and if you're a growing child, 1 gram per kilogram. Okay?
Yeah.
So if a child weighs 20 kilograms, it needs 20 grams of protein. Very little, right?
Correct.
And if it is a balanced protein, then all the better. So now, because your body doesn't store this protein, whatever is in excess, it has to convert to either carbohydrates or fats.
Or fats, yeah.
Now, those two you can store. The fats you store as glycogen. You can store it in your liver. You can store it in your muscles as an energy reserve. Anything in excess of that is stored in the fat. But because you are detoxifying or trying to detoxify this massive load of all these phenol groups and anything else that comes in the animal product, most of those things are fat soluble.
Yeah.
So the fat that you produce actually also dissolves many of those toxins just to separate them from your bloodstream. So the fat that is in your body, if you are on a high animal protein diet with its concomitant load of other undesirable elements, you get a lot of hormones involved in that. You get, it comes with a package. Can you imagine the terror of the animals that are being slaughtered? What the cortisol levels are, and the adrenaline, all of that comes with your meal, right?
Correct, because it's in the meat.
Okay. All right. Now, many of the other chemicals that are in those products get dissolved in your fat, and they're stored there. Then one day you get sick, Martin, and you're not feeling well. You might be nauseous. You're not eating right. What does your body use then to keep you going?
It goes into that fat.
Exactly. Especially if you have a fever, you're actually burning a lot of this fat,
Yeah.
right? And those toxins are released. So your toxic load, when you are burning that fat, is heightened.
Yeah.
That knocks your immune system for a 6. So how do you keep a good immune system? Plant-based diet.
That's it.
A whole food,
Yes.
plant-based diet. That's how you keep a good immune system. So animal proteins, we tested them in the laboratory. We did literally hundreds of experiments using any animal model that you can think of, where we tested the immune response and the overall health status of an animal, its cholesterol levels, its amino acid profiles, its immune compounds, its bone composition, the whole lot. When we tested a plant-based protein diet with an animal protein-based diet, the results were absolutely staggering. On every single level. Cholesterol, for example. You get 2 kinds of cholesterol. High density and low density. And the one is associated with cardiovascular disease, the other one not. And the ratio of HDL, which is the high, and the low density one, which is the LDL, is very important. And the plant-based diet, the ratios were always perfect, no matter whether you tested a carnivore or whether you tested a herbivore. But the ratio was always bad when it was an animal protein. And also the immune parameters that we tested. So it was absolutely astounding that you got these consistent results. Yeah. So your diet, very important. Let's talk a little bit about what to eat and how to eat.
Correct.
So Martin, just one of the graphs that will illustrate what animal protein will do just in terms of any cancer that you want to measure. In this case, it was lymph gland cancer. Then it is per capita animal protein consumption. Per country, Japan has a very low protein consumption relative to their general diet. They're not like the Westerner that'll have a huge steak. They will have little slivers or something, but generally a low consumption. And then the Western countries like Canada, Denmark, USA. The USA is normally always on the top of the hit parade because they have the worst diet on the planet, generally speaking. Then you can see there's a very strong correlation of this kind of cancer associated with animal protein consumption. The higher it is, the higher the rate of cancer. If you look at dietary fat and breast cancer, for example, and the high fat diet is always associated with a high animal protein diet.
Yeah.
Like cheese, for example, any dairy product is very high in fat, and animal proteins are very high in fat.
And there's these new diets that are specifically high-fat diets. you have
Exactly.
to go on to.
So if you look at the Eastern nations like Japan, Thailand, etc., they have a very low breast cancer rate. And again, the USA, Canada, and the Western countries, they have the highest rate of these kinds of cancer. There's no doubt that there's a very strong correlation between what goes into your mouth and what happens in your body. Here is milk and breast cancer. And again, it's fascinating that the countries that have the highest rates are the dairy-consuming countries like Denmark, Switzerland, etc. And the US, of course, is always very high on the hit parade. And those that don't really consume milk, like Thailand, Japan, etc., they consume soy milk.
Correct.
They don't have that problem.
Oh, but what about the estrogen in soy?
Don't irritate me, Martin. That is the most nauseating question that I received. It's based on total misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
And it is surprising to me that no matter how much science you put out into the world, this stubborn argument is constantly being thrown at your head. Now, the kind of estrogen, in inverted commas, that you find in legumes, particularly in soy, for example, is phytoestrogen. And phytoestrogen does not have the feminizing estrogenic properties at all. There are different binding sites, without going into detail, for estrogen. And everything in your endocrine system works on, not everything, but a lot of it works on a push-pull mechanism. So you have enhancing and you have depressing endocrine systems. Your prostaglandins work like that on a very large scale. And there's a whole host of them. So some of them elevate an issue, some of them depress an issue. And that's how you keep equilibrium. And everything is about equilibrium.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to have anabolism and you want to have catabolism. You want to activate and you want to deactivate. You don't want to build when you are digesting, then you want to assimilate. And once you've assimilated, then you want to use.
Yes,
so
yes.
everything has to be organized like this. Now, the same with these phytoestrogens. There are alpha binding sites and there are beta binding sites. And some of them will elevate activities and some of them will depress activities. Now, the phytoestrogens bind to the binding sites and compete with natural estrogen, and therefore prevent many of the problems associated with estrogen. For example, cancer, breast cancer, can be decreased by this. And it doesn't compete with the binding sites that have the feminizing effect.
Correct.
So they don't have a feminizing effect. I've always said if you go to the East Bloc countries, they don't walk around with bras. The men now I'm speaking.
Yeah.
It is a fallacy and it's based on misinformation. So the phytoestrogens that you find in soy are exactly the same phytoestrogens that you will find in flaxseed, for example. And the same person that says to you, you should take lots of flaxseed because it's healthy for your intestine, doesn't know that he's also in the same breath telling you to take phytoestrogens.
Yeah.
The one that is in there is synistogen, and it's the same that is in soy. But because soy competes with the dairy industry, therefore it has to be targeted. It is absolute stupidity or ignorance that makes people speak that way. In fact, the phytoestrogens protect you against diseases. And they have nothing to do with your masculinity or your virility. If you want to find out which is the most populous country in the world,
Yeah.
and which is one that is well known for its virility,
Yeah.
then it is particularly those nations that have high consumption of these very things.
Exactly.
There was a popular study that was done, it was called Game Changers, remember?
Yeah.
And they tested the testosterone and the virility, let's put it this way, of their masculine subjects. And the ones that had the plant-based diets, were they at the bottom of the scale or were they at the top of the scale?
No, they're at the top.
They were at the top. So these people that have these huge bulks and use anabolic steroids to get there, they are dwarfing their masculinity and shouting at those that are perfectly fine and doing well because they use phytoestrogens. I think the world is upside down. The devil is the master of reversal.
Definitely. That's why I come back to this, that once your science doesn't correlate with that Bible,
Correct.
then it is skew, even if it looks like it's correct.
Correct. I give you every seed-bearing plant. Does that include flax seeds?
Correct, yes.
Does that include the soybean?
Yes.
Does that include any other bean? So if God says that is the best diet, you take it to the laboratory, you show that it is the best diet, does it convince the people?
Nope,
No.
not at all.
No, because they are run by their palates.
Correct. Then they start looking for scientific evidence, and they actually get scientific evidence that the alternative to the Bible is actually
Correct.
better.
So you will have statements, a glass of wine is good for you, all right? And eat lots of chocolate, it's good for you. And drink lots of coffee, because we found something good in coffee.
Yeah, some tests show now that caffeine is actually, there's good in caffeine.
Exactly. But if you look at the detrimental effects and you see the 40% reduction in oxygen supply to the brain, then it's absolutely ridiculous that you can even argue like that. So what you eat is very important, and let's have a look at some of these things.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe we can just share with the viewers a normal day of eating in your life.
A normal day of eating in my life,
No, okay, my life as well.
in your life as well. All right.
Because a lot of people, okay, so if you've got people now that decided, okay, I want to give this a go, where do you go to?
All right.
Because we were like that. You're at a total loss. Okay, so I want to try this. How do I start? Where do I start?
All right. All right. What is a good diet? We've read it in the Bible, and I've proved it in the labs,
Oh, definitely.
and many people have proved it as well. And the China study stands out as a monument. And many other studies have been done. I mean, the literature is replete. So a diet that contains a lot of fruit is an excellent diet, right? Now, fruit contains a lot of water. Fruit contains carbohydrates largely, contains very low quantities of protein. So this cannot necessarily constitute all of your diet.
No,
Although some people have gotten by with, I eat only fruit.
correct.
You can.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it doesn't say eat only fruit. I give you every seed-bearing plant. So a breakfast of grains and fruits would be an excellent
Yes, so
breakfast.
we often start off with a bowl of mixed fruit.
All right. Now, what are you getting in this mixed fruit, Martin? You're getting carbohydrates, right? You're getting water that is actually cellular water. So it is the exact composition that your cell craves.
Yeah.
All right. So that's the first point. It has all the minerals. It is rich in minerals and vitamins. It's rich in vitamin C. And depending on what kind of fruit it is, it will have different components.
Yes, and also important why we start off with fruit is it digests faster.
Correct. Now, when you eat fruit and grains together, their digestion time is relatively short, which means it passes out of your stomach and becomes available to you as energy. So if you have a breakfast of animal protein, that energy is only available to you about 6 hours later. Whereas if you have this, a large proportion is available within a very short time. Now, what we can see here are different kinds of fruits. Now, there's a strawberry, for example, or a piece of a strawberry. That is the fruit that has the highest antioxidant level, together with some of the others, like the cranberries and pomegranates and all of these. They have very high and different levels of phytochemicals, the antioxidants. Now, what is an antioxidant? It is something that mops up free radicals in your body, and free radicals are carcinogenic. So basically what you're eating here is a food that fires up your immune system, helps your body to get rid of the free radicals and the dangerous elements that are produced constantly because you are metabolizing, and helps your body to clean them out.
Yes.
Can't have better than that. But then you want some energy, so you want some good bread or whatever grain. Now, 3 grains will give you a complete protein. All right, Martin, I see you put a picture in here of mixed seeds. Now, all of these seeds contain different components. Like we've said already, if you look at flaxseed, for example, you have all the omega fats that you need there in the diet. And, you know, people always say you need fish for your omega. No. Because when you eat fish, you get eicosapentaenoic acid. Whereas if you eat seeds, then you get linoleic and linolenic acid. And that is the basis of your enzyme cascade. So you can produce any of those fatty acids out of those 2 base acids that you find in the seeds. Whereas if you're getting fish, you're getting eicosapentaenoic acid, which is something that can change the clotting parameters in your blood. And you have to be very careful whether you actually want to do that. So if you start with a seed, you can produce the one that is in fish to the quantities that your body requires. Whereas if you eat it in the form of the fish, you have no control over the quantity. And so your body has to constantly correct whatever the problem is. So in any case, this is one of the best things. And I see, Martin, in your bowl here, you have pumpkin seeds, which again are rich in phytochemicals that are a deterrent to prostate cancer, for example, and prostate health. So if you grind this all up, either in your mouth or in a machine.
We grind the seeds and we throw it over our fruit. But everybody can do it in the way that they like. That's just the way that I can get the seeds. It's not as dry or anything, and you get quite used to it to get it into.
Yeah, some people put it into their porridge. And here I see you have a bowl with different grains in them. So run us through this breakfast of yours.
Well, the thing is, like you said earlier, it has to be 3 grains.
Yes.
And they are...
Well, it doesn't have to be. You see, Martin, your amino acid pool in your blood stays there for at least 18 hours.
Yeah.
So let's say you only had 1 grain for breakfast. Let's say oats. You might have a shortage of some things. If later on in the day you're eating bread, you're adding the second one.
Yes.
And that pool stays there. So you don't have to eat it all at the same time. Of course, if you eat it at the same time, fine.
But it helps you with your staying
power.
Yes.
With your stamina.
Otherwise, you're going to be hungry.
Correct.
A little bit.
If your body has a shortage of one element, it develops a craving.
Correct.
And people that have a craving for sweet things are actually satisfying the craving with the wrong thing.
Yeah.
the body might be craving something totally different. But if you have a whole food diet, and here you have 3 grains, which are the grains that are using here?
Yeah, that is millet and oats. And if I remember correctly, that's ground wheat.
All right, so you have one here of millet, which is an alkaline grain. Excellent. And it is a complete protein by itself. It's one of the few grains that actually has a complete protein. So it's also important that you realize that you should buy dehusked millet, right? So you buy it from a health food store or a supplier that supplies it for human consumption, because you're not a bird. And a bird deshells it and throws out the little shells, but you would have a veritable chewing experience. So let them do that process for you. All right, so you put 3 grains together, you create a 3-grain porridge, and that should have plenty of sustaining power.
And just for interest sake, we prepare it in different ways. Sometimes we actually, because a lot of people don't have time, so you can put this in a slow cooker for a few hours overnight. And the next morning, you got enough of this meal for 3 days.
Now, it's also very interesting, Martin, that grains contain other components which are enzyme suppressants. Now, did God make a mistake when he put enzyme suppressants in there? No, because the seed has to be kept dormant. And only when it is activated is that suppressant eliminated. And cooking also eliminates it. So some of the components like the phytic acids, etc., by putting it in a slow cooker, you're actually getting rid of the enzyme suppressants, the natural enzyme suppressants.
Yes.
And sprouting does the same thing. So sprouts are excellent food because they have been energized and the suppressants are all gone.
That makes it easier to digest.
Much easier. And also you have the phytochemicals and the vitamins being activated inside it. Here you have a avo and sauerkraut bread, Martin. Do you like that kind of thing?
Yeah, this is like pudding for breakfast.
Now, sauerkraut, of course, is a fermented food, right? And as a fermented food, if it is in the natural state, not heated and everything killed, then this is like a probiotic.
Correct. That helps. That's being a friend to a friend.
That's helping your friends, sending them some friends to play with, right? And keeping the mix perfect. You could also using coconut milk or using soy milk. Or using cashew nut milk or a seed milk. You could make your own yogurt.
Yeah.
So you could actually just purchase a probiotic pill and put it in there and keep it at a temperature, which is almost body temperature, let's say, and it'll make its own yogurt and it will not be dairy based. That would be similar to fermented foods. And avocado, of course, is very rich in monounsaturated fats. And it also adds the omega fats that you need. And it's very high in folic acid. So that is an energy food. And instead of butter, use avocado if you can.
Correct.
Who says butter must be yellow? Why can't it be green?
Exactly. And when we started eating like this, you learn all sorts of spreads that you can make with all these legumes, and you don't have to have
hummus,
a boring.
You can make all kinds of interesting things. All right.
Well, I must just add now, this is a complete breakfast the way I eat it at this stage. So it's starting off with fruit, 3-grain porridge, and then ending off with this. So it sounds like a lot of food.
Now, how do you run on that? You run on that for a long time?
You can run on that to about 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Exactly. Now, Martin, if you take that slice of bread, and if I look at that slice of bread over there, then I would imagine that looks like a whole grain sourdough bread. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
We started off with your bread recipe.
Yes.
That's also on the videos. And then afterward, a while, we got a nice sourdough plant.
Who gave you that sourdough plant?
A very good friend. I heard it's priceless. You can't buy it. So.
No, you can't. You can't. We must actually do a little video on good sourdough bread. And once you start getting into that, then it's a totally new experience again.
And once again, you mentioned that sourdough is also making that friends of you very happy.
Yes, because remember, it's not supposed to be sour. Bread is supposed to be light and sweet. So this is just your raising agent.
Yeah.
But the way in which you raise this kind of bread changes the moisture aspect. It becomes intercellular rather than extracellular water. And it's a totally different ball game, but let's not go there.
No, but just it's healthier.
It's a wonderful bread. And then let's move to something for lunch. So you have a salad here, Martin, and it contains the leafy green things. Now, the leafy green things, whether they are in the form of a salad or whether they are in the form of a vegetable like cabbage or broccoli or anything that's dark green, that's your calcium source.
Yeah.
When you see the dark green, you think calcium. Now, animal protein, because it increases the acid load, actually removes calcium from the bone to neutralize the acidity, because that's how your body is wired. You have this push-pull mechanism of parathyroid hormone and calcitonin. And the one increases the level of calcium in the bone and the other one releases it from the bone. So as soon as your body goes into an acid load, you produce parathyroid hormone, you release the calcium from the bone. Whereas leafy greens, that calcium, because it comes with an alkaline package, is automatically deposited in the bone. So if you want to have good, healthy bones, you better eat grains, legumes, and green things. Now, if you take the African diet is grains, legumes, and leafy greens, particularly things like marroch, which is like a kind of spinach, right? That they love to eat. And their calcium intake in some of the countries, like Gambia, for example, is only around 400 milligrams per day. Whereas in the United States, it's 3-4 times that quantity. But in the United States, the women have osteoporosis, and in Africa, they have none.
None, yeah.
Because all of that extra that they supposedly get from their animal products, from their dairy, is actually not taken up into the bone, but because of the acid load, contributes to release from the bone. And you get rid of it through the urine, and you have a little bit of gout, etc., as a gift beside. So this is your mineral, vitamin, calcium tablet.
Yeah, and also helps with your blood sugar.
Absolutely. And here you have a stir fry with brown rice. So then you have, this is quite a low protein diet. If you wanted to now increase the protein diet, you could add a legume.
Yeah.
Or you could add a product of a legume, such as tofu, for example.
Or you can add some nuts.
Or some nuts or something. Now, some people will say, Martin, I've heard many people say that tofu is so bland. Well, you know what? Everything is really bland. If you take meat and you wash out all the blood so that it's just a white pulp, it's totally tasteless. So the only taste that you will get out of it is by what you add. And exactly the same with tofu. You can make, if you want to know how to use tofu, then go to the countries that utilize it.
Yes.
Go and check out recipes, Thai recipes, Japanese recipes, Chinese recipes. Those are the countries where this is a staple diet, and learn from them how to prepare it so that it satisfies the palate. So a little bit of homework, a little bit of internet usage, and you can become a gourmet, right? So a stir fry on rice with all of these things added, and then you will have a pretty healthy protein diet. And here you have a chickpea stew with coconut cream and bulgur wheat. Now, bulgur is cracked wheat. It's made in a very special way. They use traditionally these huge pots, and they have a fire underneath them, and you cook the grain, and then you spread the grain out and you dry it like you would in the sun, and then you put it through a mill that just cracks it. And that's how you get bulgur. So it's already pre-cooked. That's why it cooks very quickly. So that's one of the nice things. So a nice chickpea stew with coconut cream. Well, Martin, there you have a saturated fat in the mix, coconut cream. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Correct. Please.
Because people will say,
Ooh.
that's a saturated fat, that's bad for you. Because that's what the mantra is.
Yep.
And saturated fat is bad for you if it is an animal fat. Because animal fat consists of stearic acid. But coconut cream, the fat, is also saturated, but it consists of palmitic acid. Then the other thing is animal fat has 0 antioxidant in it. Whereas coconut cream has high levels of antioxidant, vitamin E in it. So this kind of fat, palmitic acid, is so readily metabolized by the human body. In other words, that is a fat basically designed for human consumption.
Correct.
And any grain will have a component of saturated fats, palmitic acid largely. Then it will have the polyunsaturated fats and the monounsaturated fats. And it's interesting as you go down the line, if you take an animal fat like butter, which is stearic acid, no antioxidant, when you heat that oil, it immediately forms free radicals, oxidation. When you heat coconut oil, because of the high antioxidant level in it, it doesn't form the free radicals. So which one's better for you?
Definitely coconut oil. It's not
Absolutely.
I just want to mention also that some people will have the problem, probably what we had, is you at work. So you don't have time to have your lunch and go and make it. So when we changed over from a big meal in the evening to putting it in the afternoon, we continued cooking the same meal that we would have eaten in the evening and just eat it for lunch the next day.
Yes.
Because that's one of the big switches you have to make. Big breakfast, smaller lunch, and if necessary, smallest dinner.
And it's always better not to eat a big meal late at night.
Yeah.
It's the same old argument. Animalism, catabolism. The one is building up, the other one is breaking down. When you go and you sleep, you want to go into a rest phase. You don't want to force your body to work. So if your stomach is empty when you go to bed, then you're not forced to digest and spend energy on that, and you can get a much better rest phase. So try not to eat a heavy meal for supper. If you have to eat something light like a fruit. We must remember nothing is a law of Medes and Persians here. If you've had a hard working day and you feel that you need something, then have something, but try not to eat it late at night.
Yeah, and try not to make that a norm.
Try not to make that a norm. All right, so there you have a wheat, you have chickpea, so you have a legume. By the way, the chickpea is also one of the legumes that is a complete protein. So the wheat-chickpea combination is an excellent protein. So even if you make hummus from the chickpea and you spread it on the bread as a spread, then you have a legume-wheat combination, legume-grain combination, complete protein. So this idea that plant proteins are inferior is a misnomer.
Correct.
Martin, then you want to satisfy your sweet palate, and I see you've put carob and nut clusters here.
Occasionally that goes off well after.
I see. Now the carob, of course, also comes from a legume, right? And it's largely made from the pods, but it is somewhat like chocolate, but it doesn't come with the opioids and the caffeines and the theobromines and the other evil little trappings that you have in that. So that's an excellent little end to a meal. All right, Martin, so we said that a grain legume is a perfect example. And here you have a red lentil spread, which you can, of course, season according to your palate. And a good bread, a whole wheat bread, then you have a grain legume combination. And for the busy housewife that wants to send the kids off with a good something, if you put peanut butter on that, you also have a grain legume combination.
Correct.
It's not that difficult.
It's not that difficult.
It's not rocket science.
No, and it just takes some effort to start getting used to the menu.
All right, let's just talk about this now. What have we had here in the diet? We've had foods that are rich in antioxidants and phytochemicals. That's your fruits. And minerals and vitamins and everything that you require. And different foods have different components.
Correct.
So if you want to make a snack now for the evening, and you have to choose between something, you want to give your kids something to eat or something while they're doing whatever they're doing. If you take popcorn, that is very rich in certain minerals. Zinc, for example, is very high in popcorn. It's easily digestible. Put a little bit of sprinkling over it, of a seasoning, and there is something to keep your kids occupied and keep them happy.
Yeah.
And you can snack on something like that. Whereas if you snack on the things that you buy in the store, you're going to get the saturated animal fats, or you're going to get oxidized fats like polyunsaturates that have been highly processed and heated. So you have a high fat, refined food meal that is really not good for you. So, yes, it's just a different mindset.
That's it.
I did write a book some time ago called Diet and Health Scientific Perspective, with lots of peer review articles that are cited in it, plus a lot of our own research. And it's not in print anymore. And then there is the book by Colin Campbell, and it's called the China Study, which sort of corroborated what was done before. So there are all of these studies which show that the diet that is advocated in the scriptures is actually the diet that is best suited for humanity.
Yeah.
And the China study was not done from a biblical perspective. It was just pure science. And the same with the book Diet and Health that I wrote, was from a purely scientific perspective. But the scientific perspective happens to be in absolute harmony with the scriptures.
Definitely. It has to be. And like, we're going to repeat it. If your science is contrary to the Bible, I'm sorry, it's false science.
Correct. Now, the interesting thing to me was that many of the claims are absolutely the opposite of what the world would like to hear. And yet, when you take it to the laboratory, consistently the narrative that supports the Bible comes to the fore. I want to tell you, Martin, that I have found the Bible to be the most trustworthy book that exists on the planet. And it is the most denigrated, suppressed book or distorted falsely quoted book in the entire world. And at every single level, whether it be regarding the plan of salvation, whether it be the origin of all things, whether it be the diet best suited, whether it be the best mental doctor on the planet, this is the book that supplies all of those answers. And if people would only listen to what their Creator has told them, then according to His promise, none of these diseases would be doing to humanity what they are doing to it now. And particularly in the time that we are living in now.
Yes.
With all of this evidence, why don't we give God a chance? Because it seems to me that very soon we will be between a rock and a hard place, and we'll have to make a choice. Now, when it comes to the issue of diet and health, as we've discussed, and the reason why we are doing it also in this time of disease in the world, particularly now, and the importance of a strong immune system, it is no guarantee that you won't get sick.
Correct.
Right?
Definitely. It's not.
And that is why it's important that we also learn about how to deal with the issue once you actually do get sick. Because it is so heartbreaking to see how many hundreds of people end up in the medical system. They go to hospital. Many of these doctors are working very hard to try and save lives, but people are dying.
Yes.
And what is there that we can do in order to give our body the best possible opportunity to ward off the effects of disease?
Yes, and what is there if you do get a disease to help the body to get through this?
Correct. So now we've already stated, you need exercise, you need fresh air, you need good water, you need a healthy diet that will supply everything that your body and your immune system requires to fight and ward off diseases. And if you do get the disease, what can you do naturally to help your body even further? Number one is water. Because water not only supplies everything to your body, but also gets rid of everything that is detrimental. So water treatment, whether you use the water internally, whether you use it externally, is an excellent treatment. Hydrotherapy is one of the best methods to help your body fight disease. So get into contact with people that know how to judiciously use water to fight a disease, and how to give your immune system a super boost, hot and cold compresses. How do we help a body that is overloaded with toxins or proteins that shouldn't be in the body, for example? How do you rid your body of these things? Charcoal. It's such a simple method. You can take a teaspoon or a tablespoon of charcoal, mix it in some fruit juice or something, drink it down, and it will bind toxins and take them out of your body. You can make charcoal poultices, where you take a little bit of boiled linseed, mix charcoal in there, spread them on a cloth, and make a poultice, put a piece of plastic, especially over the liver area, or wherever the problem is. If you have a wound or something, a poultice like that can draw out toxins and help your body get rid of whatever is causing the problem. There are all of these things that we can do to help the body overcome disease. Lifestyle is only one component
Yeah.
of dealing with a crisis. And then natural products like herb teas. Find out what herb tea does what. I mean, there's so much information on the internet.
Correct.
We cannot possibly provide the information in a series like this.
No, we can't. And you've made quite an extensive amount of lectures on this. So I'll put all those links in.
Yes.
But another thing that I want to add is just put the things that you want to, you research to the test.
Yes.
Does it add up to what the Bible says?
Correct.
If it falls in there, then you can use these remedies.
Correct. And, simple things like drinking water with lemon juice in it. And what temperature should the water be when you are not feeling very well? And what kind of tea is detoxifying? What does stinging nettle tea do? What does buchu tea do? I mean, for things like, for example, kidney infections or bladder infections. I mean, we do not necessarily, in the time that we are heading towards, have access to medication at every single turn. But you can ward off bladder infections with herbal teas, and it's amazing how well the body responds to these kinds of things. So we should become little medical missionaries in this world, and help people find the natural remedies for the maladies that are coming our way.
Thank you very much. And just lastly, the books, Counsels on Diet and Food, Ministry of Healing, excellent books to get
a good basis as to what is out there and what God expects from us. Let's pray.
Thank you.
Heavenly Father, you have given us all the means to have healthy bodies. And yes, Lord, we know that life is not fair and some people have a worse deal than others. But within the circumstances that are available to us, you have given us options. And I pray that you will help us to choose the right ones. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you for watching this video. To subscribe to our channel, click here. To get notifications, click on the bell. To watch the next video, click here. Thank you, and we'll see you again.